I have been married to Adrian for 5 years, and he has hated me for 5 years. The person he likes is my sister, and after my sister unexpectedly passed away, he believes that the one who should have died is me, harboring deep-seated hatred toward me. Knowing full well that I liked him, he deliberately married me and subjected me to cold violence. I endured a full 5 years of torment until one day, he brought home a foreign student who bore a striking resemblance to my sister. Upon seeing me, she obediently called me sister. At that moment, I knew it was time to leave. So, I quietly packed my things, silently dragging my suitcase as I prepared to depart. However, he suddenly appeared, overturned my suitcase, and roared at me, "Did I allow you to leave?" My sister and I were complete opposites. She was lively and energetic, flamboyant and adorable, and quite the chatterbox, while I was quiet and reserved, disliking social interactions. Our parents and relatives doted on her more. After graduation, we chose vastly different careers. She became a designer, while I became a mortician. Our parents said my job was inauspicious, and my aunt urged me to change jobs every time we met. Only my sister was kind to me, supporting me wholeheartedly. But I never expected the accident to come so swiftly. She needed to participate in a competition, but was delayed by some matters. To save time, I called a car for her. However, during the journey, an accident occurred, the vehicle collided with an oil tanker, and my sister died on the spot. Everyone believed it was because of the car I called that my sister met her tragic end, attributing it to the ill omen of my profession bringing misfortune to her. Even I felt it was my fault. From then on, I resigned and changed jobs. My parents resented me because of my sister's incident and refused to see me. I was forced to leave home, and it was at this time that Adrian appeared by my side. He guided me, cared for me, cherished me, and looked after me, causing me, who already liked him, to fall deeper step by step. It wasn't until he confessed and we married that I realized this was a sweet trap he had prepared for me. Over these 5 years, I haven't had a single happy day. He always found ways to target and torment me. I endured his baseless cold violence, where even the slightest matter could enrage him. He always said to me, "You are gloomy and melancholic, completely unlike Lacey, you approached me only for money." So, he constantly humiliated me with money. Due to a serious illness, I needed a lot of money, but he repeatedly sabotaged my jobs, only to then dole out money to me as charity. To treat my illness, I endured all the humiliations, even believing that if I was good to him, he would gradually change his view of me. Unfortunately, I was overthinking. His hatred toward me only grew more intense. This hatred persisted into the 5th year, and when I had little time left to live, he brought home a foreign student who looked remarkably similar to my sister. Their names were also similar. She was called Lucia. The first time I saw Lucia, I was somewhat dazed, staring blankly at her and forgetting all actions, not even greeting her. It wasn't until she obediently called sister that I suddenly snapped back to reality. They were not the same, she was not her. But I knew her appearance would completely end the 5-year entanglement between Adrian and me. I quietly packed my things and that afternoon, dragged my not-too-heavy suitcase as I prepared to leave. Looking at the house where I had lived for 5 years, my heart was filled with desolation, with no attachment or the slightest regret. "Madam, what are you?" The housekeeper saw me dragging the suitcase and approached worriedly, trying to persuade me. I silently shook my head. She couldn't say anything more and could only watch me turn away with pity. "Where are you going?" The suitcase was suddenly yanked forcefully. I turned back in surprise and saw Adrian staring at me coldly. He walked toward me and grabbed my wrist tightly. "Seeing Lucia makes you guilty? Finally remembering that Lacey was killed by you? Evelyn, you always just escape, not daring to face Lacey's death, because deep down you know she died because of you." Adrian growled at me lowly, snatched the suitcase from my hand, and forcefully overturned it onto the ground. I stared blankly, subconsciously reaching to pick it up, but he dragged me toward the villa, still roaring at me. "Did I allow you to leave?" I was forced to stay. Lucia also came to the house frequently, the two of them acted intimately. She often provoked me, calling me sister repeatedly, and if I didn't respond, Adrian would reproach me in front of her, saying I was petty. He seemed to truly treat her as my sister, caring for her meticulously and cautiously. No matter how similar they were, she was not my sister. I couldn't understand why Adrian would make such a basic mistake. Was it for show to me, or did he really see her as my sister's substitute? Lucia, like my sister, was a designer. She recently needed to participate in a very important competition, and because the villa was large, she moved in directly. At night, I had to make late-night snacks for her, or she would keep calling sister at the door. My sister isn't like you, troubling others late at night, I opened the door and said to her faintly. Upon hearing this, she laughed. I'm not her. I asked, but now you're being treated as a substitute, do you feel happy about it? Lucia was stunned, and after a long pause, she glared at me angrily. I met brother Adrian at an art exhibition, he helped me out and sponsored me. Even if I'm a substitute, so what? Can a dead person compare to a living one? Oh, I remember, some living people are worse than the dead, right, sister? Her eyes were full of sarcasm, with a cold smile curling at her lips, looking very smug. I clenched my fists and didn't argue with her further. On the day of the competition, Lucia put on the dress Adrian gave her and sat in front of the dressing mirror applying makeup. As I passed the door, she suddenly called out to me, my eyebrows aren't drawn well, can you help me draw them, sister? Seeing that I didn't respond immediately, she called a few more times, so I had to go over, take the eyebrow pencil, and gently draw on her face. If I were you, I would have wisely left long ago, continuing to cling won't make him like you. I calmly drew her eyebrows, my fingers silently brushing over her brow tail. Do you know who I used to apply makeup for? Startled by my sudden question, she looked at me puzzled. What kind of people? Dead people. I smiled and continued drawing the other eyebrow, but she suddenly shuddered, pushed my hand away, and sneered, trying to scare me? Hasn't Adrian told you what I used to do? I was a mortician. I gently lifted her chin, observing carefully, I'm best at restoring the appearance of the deceased. You. She abruptly stood up, accidentally knocking over something on the table. There was only a bang of a crisp sound, glass shards scattering, and an exquisite night begonia shattered into pieces, with the hollow bead embedded in the stamen also breaking into two halves. That bead seemed familiar to me from somewhere. At that moment, Adrian happened to pass by, heard the noise, and rushed over. As soon as he reached the door, Lucia let out a scream, you ruined my work. Do you know how important this piece is to me? I have to compete today, and now everything is ruined. Was that her competition piece? Why was it placed there? Adrian walked over, looked at the fragments on the ground, and I clearly felt the anger bursting in his eyes. Just as I was about to explain, a slap had already landed harshly on my face. A clear slap echoed in the room. My head was knocked to the side, leaving only a burning pain on my face. Evelyn, you just can't stand seeing others do well? His voice was ice-cold, devoid of any emotion. I tucked the scattered hair behind my ear, numbly and bitterly lifting my head. I didn't, she knocked it over herself. Still quibbling, you always put on this look of being bullied, thinking the whole world owes you? Adrian growled at me lowly. This slap also startled Lucia. She quickly grabbed Adrian's hand. Brother Adrian, sister probably thought this was Lacey's sister's relic, so. It's my fault, I shouldn't have repaired Lacey sister's unfinished work, nor thought of using it for the competition. I just didn't want her, or you, to have regrets. When she mentioned Lacey, I realized everything was over. Adrian wouldn't listen to my explanation, his face ice-cold as he grabbed my hand and forcibly dragged me out. Lucia followed behind, seeming to plead for me but actually adding fuel to the fire. It's because I didn't explain clearly, causing sister to misunderstand. Brother Adrian, let's talk nicely, don't be angry. It was raining heavily outside, but Adrian had no intention of stopping. I was dressed thinly, the rain hitting my body was bone-chillingly cold, and I couldn't stop shivering. The housekeeper, worried about me, hurried over to dissuade him, but Adrian forcefully shoved me into the car. The car sped away, the scenery along the way unusually familiar. I realized where he was taking me. I looked at his stern profile and asked, "Are the things she left behind that important?" He gritted his teeth and viciously spat out 2 words, "Shut up." Sometimes I truly envied my sister, even felt jealous of her, but how can a living person compare to the dead? She left him at her most beautiful age, becoming a thorn in his heart that no one could touch. The rain grew heavier. I was dragged out of the car by Adrian, stumbling after him to the cemetery. The black and white photo on the tombstone still showed a smiling face, making even me somewhat dazed. She had been gone for a full 5 years, but in those 5 years, she had never truly disappeared. Everything in the house was arranged according to her preferences, including the flowers and the cat kept on the balcony. Adrian knew I was allergic to cat fur, but he never considered sending the cat away. "You've always been jealous of her, not even sparing the things she left behind. Evelyn, she's your sister, take a good look at her. Do you really deserve her?" He grabbed my hair, forcing me to stare directly at the photo on the tombstone. Rain washed over me, wetting my hair which stuck viscously to my ears. I turned back smiling. "You care so much about her things, yet why are you willing to give them to Lucia? Compared to me, how much better are you? Aren't you just finding a substitute too?" I stared intently into his eyes, questioning him. "Lacey is dead after all, it's normal for you to forget her. Why pretend and put on this affectionate act? If I were Lacey, I'd only find you disgusting. Evelyn. Don't be ungrateful, what do you have to compare with Lacey?" He suddenly choked my neck, pressing me against the tombstone. My head hit the stone platform hard, and hot blood flowed down my forehead. Tears mixed with blood slid from the corners of my eyes. I was nearly suffocating from the choke, only able to refute him weakly. "Why should I compare with her? She's my sister, I love her more than you do. Adrian, are you unable to let her go, or do you hate yourself for not saying the words you kept inside to her?" I felt the hand on my neck tighten, the intense suffocation combined with the pain in my body making my vision go black, completely losing consciousness. Upon waking, I found myself lying on a hospital bed. Adrian stood by the window, leaving only a cold back view. I didn't call him, silently closing my eyes until the doctor came in. "Mr. Adrian, this is Ms. Evelyn's examination results." The doctor handed a report to Adrian, who just glanced at it casually, uninterested. Seeing his indifferent expression, the doctor turned back to look at me complicatedly. I just smiled faintly. Helplessly, the doctor said gravely, "Advanced malignant gastric tumor. The cancer cells have spread from the primary gastric lesion to the liver and peritoneum." Adrian furrowed his brows, a fleeting trace of shock and panic in his eyes. "What advanced stage? What cancer cells?" The doctor heavily repeated what he had just said. "The cancer cells have spread to the liver and peritoneum. Regrettably, the possibility of cure is extremely slim." I gazed at the ceiling, calmly accepting this fact. I had known months ago and had already prepared for death's arrival. But Adrian was like a helpless child. He first looked at me, then urgently grabbed the doctor's arm, his voice hoarse. "Is there really no possibility of cure? Can't any intervention work?" The doctor shook his head helplessly. "She is very ill and hasn't received proper treatment all along. Dragging it to now is already a miracle." After the doctor left, the ward became unusually quiet, the air seemingly frozen. Adrian was silent, and I didn't want to speak. Now my body ached everywhere, even the pain pump didn't help, and I didn't have the strength to open my mouth. "Why didn't you tell me?" After a long while, Adrian finally spoke. I turned my head away, smiling palely. What good would telling do? When the condition was discovered, it wasn't too late, and there was still a chance for cure, so I thought of going out to work, but he repeatedly ruined my jobs, then gave me some money as alms. My parents forced me to support them, delaying my condition further, naturally losing hope. And his cold violence and baseless anger pushed me into the abyss. Later, I gave up treatment, living a worthless life, taking it day by day. "You deliberately didn't say, wanting to make me regret? Thinking that like Lacey, after death, you could make me suffer and regret?" Adrian stared at me intently, his eyes surprisingly showing more anger. I really hadn't thought of that. He hated me so much, how could he regret my death? I shook my head. I never thought you would care about my life or death. Then what do you mean? Nothing. Over 5 years, we've never communicated, except for arguments, we've barely spoken. I calmly stated the facts. He stiffened in place, unable to say a word for a long time. Afterward, I thought he would leave, but unexpectedly, he stayed, taking care of my daily needs. I kindly reminded him, put away your pitiful sympathy, work is most important, don't waste time on me. This isn't your concern. He dropped this sentence and left. After taking painkillers, I could barely get out of bed. Just as I opened the window to get some air, the ward door was knocked open. Lucia came in carrying fruits. I heard sister is ill, I came specially to visit. She placed the fruits on the table, familiarly picked some grapes, and took them to wash. After washing, she smiled soothingly at me. Sister should be more open-minded, no one can help with illness. Anyway, there's not much time left, better to go out for a walk and change your mood. I glanced at her, asking coldly, did you come just to comfort me? From what I knew of her, she definitely wasn't that kind-hearted. I'm here to give you something. She picked up the bag on the table and handed it to me. I opened it and saw it was the piece she had knocked over and shattered last time. Do you know why Brother Adrian was so angry? Because this contains Lacey's relic. He gave it to me hoping I could fulfill her wish from that year. Only I can do it, not you. Seeing her smug look, I countered, being someone's substitute, are you proud of it? It's better than not even being a substitute. Anyway, she's dead, and you won't live much longer either. Ultimately, the one staying by his side will be me. I smiled, unconcerned, then congratulations. Seeing my calm expression, she asked puzzled, aren't you angry? Nothing to be angry about. From what I know of him, you won't make it to the end. Hypocrite, no wonder he doesn't like you. She pushed me hard, I lost my balance and my back hit the table forcefully. What are you doing? Adrian arrived just then, pulled her away, and looked at me worriedly, are you okay? I didn't speak. Instead, Lucia complained to him first, Brother Adrian, she just said bad things about Lacey's sister. Get out. Adrian's voice was low, carrying undeniable anger. Lucia obviously didn't react, she stammered, it was her. Adrian coldly interrupted her, I said, get out. Realizing Adrian's anger, Lucia ran away with red eyes. I didn't expect Adrian to get so angry, was it because she mentioned Lacey? Adrian opened the food box while saying to me, after today's checkup, chemotherapy starts tomorrow. He left not to go back to the company, but to cook porridge for me. My condition worsened, allowing only liquid food. He thought outside porridge lacked nutrition, so he specially went home to cook for me. Looking at the full bowl of porridge he served, I slowly sat on the bed. You don't need to do this. The prodigal son turning back doesn't suit you. Don't flatter yourself, I just don't want you to die so quickly. He shoved the porridge into my hands, but I had no appetite. I set down the porridge and said to him seriously, I won't accept any treatment. Are you crazy? This is cancer, without treatment, you'll die. Treatment will lead to death too, I want to go with dignity. Considering dignity when ill, what exactly are you thinking in your head? I've thought about many things, considered the scene of death's arrival, imagined how painful the end would be, but I accepted all this a year ago. I didn't do chemotherapy then, and I certainly won't now. I lifted my head, looked at him, and said smiling, besides, my death would just fulfill your wish, you should be happy, not angry. Unexpectedly, this sentence made him go crazy on the spot, smashing a bunch of things. It took nurses to calm him down. Who knew that evening he came to the hospital again, coaxing me to eat and take medicine, his tone rarely gentle, as if he had become a different person. I knew he had always been like this, back then with my sister. Some words weren't said, which was his greatest regret. Now knowing I'm seriously ill and dying, he started changing his attitude again. Adrian tirelessly persuaded me to continue treatment, saying how would we know without trying if there's no chance of cure. To get me to agree, he even brought doctors and nurses to persuade me. During the day, Adrian needed to go to the company and still went back to stew porridge for me. I told him to leave it to the housekeeper, but he wouldn't listen, insisting on doing it himself. Clearly, before even eating a meal with him, he would find fault. When he wasn't at the hospital, I asked the housekeeper to buy materials and sat at the table slowly repairing the fragments Lucia left. Actually, many people don't know that initially, my sister and I had the same interests. However, she hoped we would have different developments, not wanting us to become competitors and ruin our relationship. So, I gave up the path of design. "What are you busy with?" Adrian suddenly appeared behind me at some point. I didn't turn back, completed the last bit of repair, then gently moved it aside. "See for yourself." You repaired it?" He was very surprised, leaned in to pick it up and look, finding it indeed repaired perfectly, making him incredulous. "Lucia said it was shattered like that, impossible to repair. How did you do it?" "The process is complex, but it's not entirely impossible to repair. Perhaps she just didn't put her heart into it." I smiled faintly and stood up, but saw Adrian holding the repaired night begonia in a daze. I could even see the mist welling in his eyes. His voice choked. "You actually know how to do this?" "I never knew. Your attention was never on me, it's normal not to know." I sat back on the bed, feeling pain starting all over my body again, quickly taking out a pill and stuffing it into my mouth, gulping water to force it down. "Hurting again?" Adrian looked at me nervously, hurriedly searching for medicine. "You should still listen to me. Start treatment tomorrow. Your illness really can't be delayed any longer now." I shook my head, seriously telling him, "I'll be discharged in a few days." "Evelyn, do you want to die that badly?" He roared at me. Adrian left in anger because of me. But the next day, he came again. This time, he didn't force me into treatment but told me about the interesting things he encountered on the way. When talking about interesting parts, he gestured vividly. It was the first time I saw him so lively. He was trying hard to make me laugh, but I couldn't laugh at all, just tugging at the corners of my mouth. "Your illness is serious, but it's not completely without cure. Everyone wants to keep living. Think about your parents, your sister, and me. Broken things can't be repaired well." I said this to him very seriously. He paused, took out Lucia's night begonia, pointed at it, and said, "Didn't you repair this one? Look closely, the cracks are still there. Even with the best craftsmanship and technology, it can't be restored to original. Adrian, you know my illness is advanced, what that means. I don't want to waste time in the hospital, waiting for death here." This was a very heavy topic. I had always avoided discussing it. Even more so with him. But I didn't expect him to care so much, trying every way to get me to treat. If it had been 2 years earlier, or even 1, it wouldn't have been this outcome. Adrian was stunned, silent for a long time, just staring at me fixedly. After a long time, he suddenly spoke. "I see you're really crazy, actually giving up the chance to live. From tomorrow, whether you listen or not, I'll arrange treatment for you. My affairs don't need you to decide for me. We are legal spouses, of course I can decide for you. Soon we won't be." I stood up, took out the long-prepared divorce agreement from the drawer, and handed it to him. Seeing the glaring words on it, his face instantly turned cold. "What do you mean?" "Divorce, what else could it mean? Do you want to be a widower?" "Why?" He stood up abruptly, his voice hoarse from agitation. "We've come through so many years, now you suddenly propose divorce. Don't say it so I won't be sad. I don't care about your death at all." I said to him solemnly, "Not caring is best, sign it. Part on good terms, anyway, you've waited 5 years for this moment. I set you free, we each go our way. Don't even think about it." He slammed the divorce agreement heavily on the table and turned away abruptly. Since Adrian wouldn't agree to divorce, I started cold violence. Whatever he said, I ignored, just like he did to me before. The first day he could endure, wanting to force me to treatment, I refused. His attitude was firm, he grabbed my hand tightly, called medical staff to help. In urgency, I slapped him. With a slap, the ward instantly quieted. Before, no matter how excessive Adrian was, I never laid a hand on him. This time, slapped by me, he looked at me incredulously. You. I ignored him and explained my thoughts to the doctor. The attending physician respected my decision, letting me choose. Adrian, failing to force, could only adopt a soft approach, trying to coax me to agree. But I completely ignored him, even treating him as air. Facing my cold violence, he could endure at first, but after 2-3 days, he clearly felt uncomfortable, sometimes speaking with rare grievance. If it were before, with him coaxing me like this, caring meticulously every day, tirelessly stewing porridge for me, I would be very moved and agree to anything he did. But over 5 years, my love for him had long been gradually worn away. Now, my attitude toward him was very ordinary, without love or hate. Evelyn, must you be so resolute? Thinking that dying will leave a deep impression in my heart, I tell you, some people die and are only forgotten. He finally couldn't bear it, grabbed my arm, and growled at me lowly. I looked at him calmly, smiling. Can't stand it already? These 5 years, I've endured your cold violence every day. Either you leave for months, or come back just to argue with me, silent the rest of the time. Living in such a big villa, I only felt extremely lonely. I thought if I was good to you with enough patience, you would turn back, but later I realized, for someone who doesn't love you, anything is futile. This was the first time I vented years of pain in front of him. Just a few days of cold violence, and he felt aggrieved. What about my years? He opened his mouth, wanting to refute, but couldn't say anything. I wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes and handed him the divorce agreement again. I don't have much time left. In these remaining 3 months, my only wish is to divorce you. You. He looked at me painfully, anger about to erupt. I suddenly vomited blood. He quickly came to support me. I'll call the doctor first. Sign first. Evelyn, must you do this? Sign. I insisted repeatedly. He couldn't resist me and had to open the agreement and sign his name. When the doctor arrived, he walked out of the ward weakly, leaving only a dejected back view. A few days later, I was discharged. Adrian drove to pick me up. I told him to drive directly to the Civil Affairs Bureau. The documents were ready. I just wanted to get the divorce certificate quickly. You're that eager? He asked me. I nodded, yes, eager. Next was a long silence. He drove. I closed my eyes and unknowingly fell asleep. Recently, my sleep had been poor, often waking from pain, eating little, starting to lose weight rapidly. I could clearly feel my physical condition declining quickly. I didn't know how long I slept. I woke groggily, finding Adrian's coat covering me, the car stopped by the roadside, and him outside on the phone. Glancing at me unintentionally, he immediately hung up, got in the car, and handed me a pill. Take some painkiller first, it'll hurt again soon. The word again surprised me. Was I showing pain while asleep? I was already starting to feel dazed, but still smiled and took the pill. As I was about to dry swallow, he handed me a cup of poured hot water. Dry swallowing isn't good for the efficacy. Silently taking it, I swallowed the pill and thanked him. Let's go, to the Civil Affairs Bureau. As you said, you'll die sooner or later. When you die, our legal relationship will automatically end. Is it necessary to get a divorce certificate? He looked at me, his eyes surprisingly showing some heartache. Yes, it seemed unnecessary, but having seen through this relationship, I didn't want any ties with him before death. I wanted to leave cleanly. I'm not dead yet, there are still months ahead, and I really don't want to maintain this cold relationship with you. These words seemed to sting him. Adrian's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his face terrifyingly pale. You hate me. No, it's always been you hating me, so even now you don't want to let me go. Adrian, I haven't done anything to wrong you. Even my sister's death is actually your delusion. Blaming her death on me makes you feel better? But these 5 years, you haven't been well either. At this point, let's not torment each other anymore. Consider it my plea. I never thought of tormenting you. I just want to accompany you through this last journey. He said it sincerely, not deceiving me, but having seriously thought about it. I shook my head. No need, the time when I needed you has passed. Now I just want to be alone, thank you for your understanding. Next was another long silence. He looked at me painfully, his mouth twitching, seeming to have too many words to say, but under my indifferent gaze, he sighed silently, pushed open the car door, let's go, to the Civil Affairs Bureau. Divorce required a 1-month cooling-off period, he instead felt a sense of relief. This month, can I at least take care of you? When coming out, he tilted his head, looking at me gently. The person is almost dead, and now he thinks of caring? I chuckled and shook my head, no need, I don't need your sympathy and pity. If it's fear of leaving regrets again, I think it's unnecessary, forgetting someone isn't hard, and I wasn't that important in your heart anyway. I don't know if my words stimulated him, he suddenly gripped my wrist, gritting his teeth, we're not divorced yet, even if you hate me that much, don't joke with yourself, you're degrading yourself. You're wrong, I don't hate you at all, just no longer interested in you. I shook off his hand, walked to the roadside, just then a taxi came, I immediately hailed it and left. Behind came Adrian's hoarse shout, he was calling my name, but I didn't want to hear. 1 month isn't long, but not short either, as my body worsened, likely in the last period, I couldn't go anywhere. I was tired of this place, tired of the people here, so decided to travel, planning to go wherever, at least better than waiting for death in place. During this time, I visited many places, rested when tired, continued when energetic, took painkillers when hurting. But painkillers could hardly stop the body's pain anymore, I could only grit my teeth and endure. Although I was traveling alone, I always felt someone following me. Especially when I encountered trouble, a figure would always appear. For example, abroad when my wallet was robbed, soon someone would retrieve it for me, placing it where I could see. Or when approaching dangerous places, someone would find ways to remind me, but never met me face to face. Once I fainted on the street, upon waking, I was in the hospital. The doctor said a person in a coat and sunglasses sent me, looking like Chinese. I understood in my heart, without exposing it. A month later, I returned to the country, on time for divorce procedures. Adrian was rarely punctual. Seeing him again, he looked more haggard than me, with wounds still on his face and neck. I didn't ask more, tacitly entering the Civil Affairs Bureau with him. After getting the divorce certificate, I slightly breathed a sigh of relief. You've got what you wanted. He stood beside me, his voice weaker than the wind. I repeated his words, saying in the calmest tone, yes, got what I wanted, you too, finally rid of me. His gaze flickered, eyes welling with sorrow, nose tip red. Next, where do you plan to go? Don't know, anywhere, I don't have much time, try to visit all places I haven't been. You still want to keep tossing? So unwilling to live? He grabbed my hand tightly, wanting to firmly confine me. I forcefully shook off his hand, sneering, you think I don't want to live? You think I want to get this sick? Adrian, belated concern is the most disgusting, I don't need it. After separating from him, I bought several flight tickets to various places. He followed me during previous travels, this time, I won't give him the chance to find me. In these 5 years, he left me only hurt and pain, now the hypocritical concern is just to avoid guilt, wanting to compensate before my death. But I know he doesn't regret what he did to me. Therefore, his guilt and pity, I don't want, nor need. Since Evelyn left, Adrian felt he was going crazy. He had no heart for work, indifferent to everything, only wanting to find her traces. The world is so big, flights to so many places, he sent people to search one by one, but no news. She was like disappeared from this world. Lucia came to find him many times, he avoided her. In the end, he didn't go crazy but drove Lucia mad. She rushed into his office desperately, red-eyed crying to him, Brother Adrian, didn't you hate her the most? Why did you change after she divorced you? Is the seed in your heart already sprouted, but you didn't notice? Get out, scram. Adrian wouldn't listen at all. Lucia, in anger, swept things off the desk, I'm not leaving. Lacey died, you couldn't let go, so hated Evelyn, now Evelyn is dead too, you can't let go again. Are you planning to hate me? She died of illness, advanced cancer, no need to blame yourself. These words made Adrian explode completely, pouncing on Lucia like a beast, tightly holding her arms, staring at her with bloodshot eyes. She's not dead, she's still alive. Stop talking nonsense. I heard from the assistant you've not rested for days, not eaten properly. Continuing like this, you'll die. None of your business, get out. Adrian drove Lucia away, weakly slumping to the ground. He didn't know what was wrong with him. Recently he often thought of Evelyn. Her image always lingered in his mind, especially that last look, indifferent, distant, and pale, like a rose about to wilt any time. Painfully, he rummaged through the mess on the ground to find the night begonia Evelyn repaired. The moment he took out the exquisite glass box, the begonia shattered instantly. At that moment, the door was pushed open. Adrian, we found Madam's whereabouts. Adrian lifted his head abruptly. Where? She passed away during travel. The body has been cremated, and the ashes scattered in the sea according to her personal wish. Dead, dead. Adrian kept repeating these two words, crying and laughing, looking extremely manic. Later, Adrian shouldered his pack and set off on the journey following Evelyn's travel path. In the endless crowd, he dazedly saw a familiar back. Almost without hesitation, he rushed over, eagerly grabbing the other's hand. What are you doing? Sexual harassment? The girl backhanded a slap. After being hit, he saw the other's face clearly and quickly apologized. Sorry, I mistook you, your back looks like someone. Crazy, using such low tactics to hit on. The girl and her companion left cursing. He watched the receding back dejectedly and continued walking forward. This was already the 1230th person he had mistaken.